The dark fantasy world of fear and hunger features a pantheon of powerful deities, including not only the primordial old gods, but also several ascended gods, beings that achieved godhood through human origin or intervention. These ascended gods stand apart from the ageless old gods in that they were once mortal, or born of mortal intervention, yet rose to rival the old gods in power and influence. Not only that, each of these ascended gods also embodies a facet of humanity's journey. ALLL-MER represents a messianic hope and divine retribution. The god of fear and hunger embodies humanity's suffering and the cruel progress born from it. The SULFUR god personifies cast-off hatred and demonic chaos. Logic stands as the culmination of human ingenuity through technology. This video will explore each deity's origin story, powers, mysteries, and symbolism, drawing on in-game lore and evidence. By analyzing their stories and significance, including theological parallels, alchemical symbols, and mythical motifs, we gain insight into the rich lore of fear and hunger. So let's begin with ALLL-MER's, the first human to ascend and the catalyst of a new age. ALLL-MER is known as the Ascended One, a title reflecting his unprecedented rise from mortality to true godhood. Alongside the god of fear and hunger, he is one of only two known beings to have ascended to the rank of an old god from human origins. ALLL-MER's story is pivotal to the world's history, as his life, death, and resurrection ushered in a new era of religion and societal order. In the lore, he is often revered as the savior of mankind and is associated with the symbol of the cross, the very instrument of his martyrdom and triumph. ALLL-MER's origin is shrouded in dual narratives, reflecting both religious and mythic interpretations. The more prevalent story casts ALLL-MER as a Christ-like figure, born of humble human origins. He was said to be the child of a virgin mother, sired by a divine false god. Raised in the holy city of Jataya in the eastern sanctuaries, the mortal ALLL-MER preached new ideals that united people across different religions and backgrounds. His teachings of a unified humanity under one benevolent doctrine quickly gained him a following of 12 apostles, echoing biblical tradition. However, ALLL-MER's growing influence alarmed the corrupt kings and sultans of the time. Seen as a threat to the established order and the authority of contemporary new gods, he was arrested and sentenced to death by crucifixion. According to this account, ALLL-MER's suffering and sacrificial death on the cross elevated him to martyrdom, and at the moment of death, he ascended to true godhood, transcending his mortal form. In a striking parallel to Christian scripture, ALLL-MER is said to have risen again 3 days after his execution, reappearing to his grieving apostles. Now, wielding the power of an ascended god, he set out to fulfill his mission of saving humanity. ALLL-MER exacted vengeance upon the tyrants who persecuted him, slaying the kings and sultans who had ruled through cruelty. This divine retribution cemented ALLL-MER's status as both savior and avenger, radically altering the world's power structure. Alongside this humanistic origin tale, an alternate origin story exists, originating from a rare occult text known as the Skin Bible of ALLL-MER, written by the medieval scholar Enki Ankarian. This version suggests ALLL-MER was not simply a mortal who achieved godhood, but rather a being designed by older deities. It recounts how Sylvian, the old god of fertility and love, commissioned a lesser goddess, Vitruvia, the master architect, to draw the ideal forms of man and woman in Sylvian's likeness. Sylvian then created humanity according to those blueprints. Over time, Vitruvia grew dissatisfied with the imperfections in these early humans and resolved to fashion the perfect human being, the pinnacle of mankind's potential. The result of Vitruvia's grand design was a singular man born in the year 0. This man would become known as ALLL-MER. In this account, ALLL-MER's very existence was preordained by higher powers, making him less a grassroots messiah and more a construct of the divine, essentially half god and half man by birth. While the two origin stories differ in emphasis, one portraying ALLL-MER as an everyman risen to challenge the heavens, the other as a purpose-built demigod, they need not be mutually exclusive. In fact, in-universe scholars suggest the truth might lie somewhere between these stories. It is possible ALLL-MER's mortal life and divine design intertwined. He could have been divinely conceived, hence a false god as father, and simultaneously the product of an old god's grand experiment in human perfection. Regardless of which origin one favors, both narratives agree ALLL-MER's ascension occurred in year 0, a world-changing event that reset the calendar and set humanity on a new course. ALLL-MER's ascension marked the dawn of a new world. After resurrecting and gathering his apostles, the newly divine ALLL-MER acted swiftly to liberate humanity from its oppressors. With wrathful divine justice, he and his followers toppled the old regimes. The bloodbath that ensued shook the world order as monarchs and warlords fell before ALLL-MER's power. In the void left by these fallen rulers, ALLL-MER established a new world order, founded on the principles he had taught in life. He positioned himself at the center of worship, effectively becoming the chief deity of the realm. This included laying down religious tenets and moral laws that would be observed for centuries to come. The impact on civilization was immense. Under ALLL-MER's influence, regions like Jataya, his birthplace, were canonized as holy, and major nations like the Eastern sanctuaries, the Kingdom of Rondon, Abyssonia, Bohemia, Vatican City, and Bremen, among others, adopted his teachings as the bedrock of their societies. Year 0 of the new calendar thus commemorates the birth of his new self as an ascended gods and the birth of a new era. ALLL-MER's dominance was so profound that the age of his rule later came to be known as the Old World, from the perspective of those who supplanted it. For over 800 years, ALLL-MER's religion, sometimes simply called the Church of ALLL-MER, became the most widespread faith in the known world. By the time of Fear and Hunger II, set in the 1940s, his cult greatly surpassed others in popularity, meaning that even after many upheavals, ALLL-MER remained the most widely revered deity among common folk. This parallels how, in our world, a dominant religion can endure for millennia. However, ALLL-MER's direct influence on worldly affairs did not last indefinitely. In the year 809, a group known as the Fellowship of New Gods rose, seeking to claim godhood for themselves and liberate humanity from the influence of the old gods, who had gradually withdrawn from the world. By this point, ALLL-MER himself had vanished from the mortal realm. It is suggested that he was gone, supposedly having ascended to take his place as a descended god, implying that ALLL-MER's like other true gods, eventually departed the world for a higher plane of existence. Perhaps the divine city of Mahabri once his work was done. In the absence of the true gods, society began to decay and human values became corrupted, paving the way for the Fellowship's rebellion. The Fellowship ultimately succeeded in establishing a new gods era, turning ALLL-MER's New World Order into the now displaced Old Order. Even so, ALLL-MER's legacy endured in cultural memory, religious institutions, and lingering divine influence. His mortal remains were enshrined in an ancient tomb near Mahabri, and there are even bizarre legends of necromantic attempts to revive him. One darkly comic in-game anecdote notes that using necromancy on ALLL-MER's corpse merely causes an irreverent physiological reaction. His phallus becomes erect rather than resurrection. This anecdote aside, ALLL-MER's story is generally treated with reverence in universe. He is remembered not just as a god, but as the exemplar of human divine ascension, the one who proved a mortal could rival the old gods. ALLL-MER's narrative is rich with symbolism, much of it deliberately paralleling Christian theology. The virgin birth, the gathering of 12 disciples, the message of peace and unity, the crucifixion, the resurrection after 3 days, and the role as a martyr savior are all clear allusions to the story of Jesus Christ. The in-game lore explicitly notes these parallels. ALLL-MER was raised by a virgin mother and sired by God. His father, in this case a false god, gathered 12 apostles, was crucified and died for mankind's sins, rose from the dead, and finally ascended to join the divine realm. This close mirroring is not coincidental. It situates ALLL-MER as a messianic figure within the fear and hunger cosmology, making use of familiar religious archetypes to convey his role. However, ALLL-MER also sharply deviates from the Christ figure in crucial ways. Most notably, upon gaining divine power, ALLL-MER unleashes violent judgment on the rulers of mankind, personally executing the monarchs and tyrants who oppressed the people. Where Christ's story emphasizes forgiveness and spiritual salvation, ALLL-MER's tale takes a darker, more apocalyptic turn. He delivers material salvation through the sword. As the lore dryly notes, unlike Jesus Christ, ALLL-MER murders all the monarchs and the ruling bodies with his power and sets up a new world order, with him being the main center of worship. In effect, he is a warrior messiah, blending the New Testament savior with an Old Testament wrathful deliverer. This duality makes ALLL-MER a complex figure, both a compassionate teacher and a vengeful conqueror. Symbolically, ALLL-MER's personal sigil is the crucifix, a direct reference to his method of execution and subsequent triumph over death. The cross in fear and hunger serves as a reminder of ALLL-MER's sacrifice and victory, much as it does in Christianity, but perhaps also as a stark emblem of the brutality that was required to change the world. Since in ALLL-MER's case, the crucifix became a rallying symbol that preceded the slaughter of the old regimes. In the game's mechanics, characters who devote themselves to ALLL-MER can acquire the mark of ALLL-MER, a protective sigil, further cementing his role as a guardian figure for his followers. Beyond religious imagery, there are hints of alchemy and occult philosophy in ALLL-MER's mythos, particularly in the alternative Vitruvia origin. The name Vitruvia evokes Vitruvius and the Vitruvian man, symbolizing architectural and anatomical perfection. The idea of creating the perfect human resonates with alchemical pursuits of the Homo perfectus, or even the creation of a homunculus, an artificial being representing human perfection. In alchemical symbolism, achieving perfection often involves purification and the union of opposites. Interestingly, ALLL-MER's ascension required him to purge his own imperfections. As we will see, he literally cast out the darkest parts of himself to ascend. Those cast-off impurities later became the sulfur god. This can be seen as an alchemical process. The base matter, mortal ALLL-MER, is refined and purified through suffering and death into spiritual gold, godhood, with the dross, his hatred and negative emotions, separated out. Thus, ALLL-MER's transformation has an almost alchemical allegory embedded in it. Even ALLL-MER's triple L name styling carries an air of arcane mystery. The creator of the series, Miro Haverinen, has noted that the third L in ALLL-MER was added simply to make the name look more unusual and mystical. It may contain a deeper meaning, for instance, whether ALLL-MER implies all merging or completeness, but officially it seems to be a stylistic flair to give the character an ancient, enigmatic quality. Notably, the name ALLL-MER could be interpreted as a play on All-Mother or All-Merciful or other such epithets, but in lore he is explicitly male and often called the All-Father by his devotees, in an echo of the All-Father archetype, like Odin or the Abrahamic god. In summary, ALLL-MER stands as the paragon of ascension in fear and hunger. A being who combined human and divine attributes, mirrored real-world messianic myths, and fundamentally changed the course of history. His legacy is one of unity through faith, but also a reminder of the violence and sacrifice that underpinned the birth of a better world. As we transition to the next deity, it is worth noting that ALLL-MER's ascension had unintended consequences, specifically the creation of a dark counterpart. When ALLL-MER shed his mortal flaws to become a god, those cast-off pieces did not vanish. Instead, they coalesced into a new malevolent entity, the sulfur god, the god of hellfire and burning hatred. If ALLL-MER can be likened to a holy father figure in fear and hunger, the sulfur god emerges as a kind of antithetical devil. He is described as an obscure deity, one barely known to mankind. Yet his origin is intrinsically tied to ALLL-MER's ascension. In fact, the sulfur god was born at the very moment ALLL-MER became a god, as the byproduct of ALLL-MER casting out his own negative essence. According to the lore, when ALLL-MER ascended around year 0, he expelled his subconscious hatred-filled parts deep into the sulfur pits of the underworld, effectively purging himself of all malice and sin. Those festering remnants did not die. Instead, they congealed in the darkness beneath the earth, conceived into a new ascended god, the sulfur god. This genesis makes the sulfur god unique among ascended gods. Unlike ALLL-MER and the god of fear and hunger, who were originally human or born through human involvement, the sulfur god is a shadow twin, a being whose existence is purely the result of a god's psychic detritus. He is essentially ALLL-MER's other half, containing all of ALLL-MER's anger, hatred, and violent impulses that were shed during ascension. The relationship is even acknowledged in lore as a kind of kinship. ALLL-MER is listed as a relative of the sulfur god, the other half. In metaphorical terms, if ALLL-MER is the purified light, the sulfur god is the residual darkness. This dynamic is strongly reminiscent of theological dualism. For example, God versus Satan in Christian tradition, or Ahura Mazda versus Angra Mainyu in Zoroastrianism. Indeed, many symbolic cues associate the sulfur god with the devil or hell. The sulfur god's very name and iconography draw from classical representations of hell and alchemy. His known symbol consists of a triangle atop another inverted triangle, with an inverted cross beneath the second triangle. This design is directly adapted from the alchemical symbol for sulfur, also famously called the Leviathan cross, or Satan's cross in occult symbolism. In traditional alchemy, the symbol of sulfur comprises a triangle, symbolizing fire, balanced on a cross, symbolizing earth matter, representing the soul or essence bound to the material. In the sulfur god's symbol, an extra triangle has been added, and the cross is inverted, accentuating its diabolical connotation. The use of an inverted cross and brimstone imagery unmistakably evokes infernal themes. Sulfur, or brimstone, has long been associated with the smell of hell and the domain of Satan in Judeo-Christian lore. As one trivia note in the game points out, given the sulfur god's relationship to ALLL-MER, he might be partially inspired by Lucifer, Satan, along with hell, as sulfur was often used as a symbol of hell and eternal damnation. The sulfur god is essentially the Lucifer to ALLL-MER's god, the dark mirror born from the light. Embedded in this symbolism is also an alchemical principle. Sulfur in alchemy represents the volatile, passionate spirit, the combustible element of the soul, as opposed to salt, body, or mercury, mind. The sulfur god being composed of ALLL-MER's volatile hatred aligns with this notion. He is literally the volatile essence given independent life. His emblem, the Leviathan cross, has been adopted in modern times as a sign of Satanism or defiance against the divine, which fits the sulfur god's role as the antithesis of ALLL-MER's divinity. In the cosmic clock of runic symbols shown in Fear and Hunger, the sulfur symbol is placed adjacent to ALLL-MER's, implying their duality in the pantheon. The Leviathan cross, also known as the alchemical symbol of sulfur, is used as the sigil of the sulfur god in Fear and Hunger. Its design of an inverted cross beneath a double crossbar, or infinity loop, is historically associated with brimstone and satanic imagery, underscoring the sulfur god's infernal character. Despite, or perhaps because of, his ominous nature, the sulfur god remains extremely obscure in the world of Fear and Hunger. For much of history, he lurked unseen in the bowels of the earth, an old and obscure deity whose name surfaces only in the vaguest references. In the timeline of the games, humanity largely remained unaware of the sulfur god's existence. He did not openly interfere with the world during the ages of ALLL-MER's rule or the new god's ascension. This could be interpreted in a few ways. It might be that the sulfur god, lacking a true mortal following or purpose, lay dormant in a kind of gestational state for centuries. After all, he was born of discarded emotions rather than deliberate intent, which might mean he initially existed only as a latent malevolence without direction. What is clear is that by the time of Fear and Hunger, 2, Termina, the sulfur god begins to stir and manifest. His emergence is tied to a dark cult and a gruesome event known as the Festival of Termina. This festival is in fact a nightmarish contest orchestrated in the town of Prehevel, where several individuals are forced to participate in a cycle of slaughter. It is revealed that behind this event lies the cult of sulfur, a secretive sect devoted to the sulfur god. The leader of this cult is Perkele, a mysterious figure who serves as the sulfur god's chief worshipper and facilitator. The name Perkele is worth noting. In Finnish, Perkele is a name for the devil, another deliberate nod to satanic imagery in context. Perkele's aim during the Termina festival is twofold: to gather Resh souls to send to the sulfur god as nourishment, and to find a worthy candidate to join the cult of sulfur. This implies that the sulfur god hungers for human souls, which would strengthen him, or perhaps help bring him fully into the world. The culmination of these efforts is seen in Ending Sea of Fear and Hunger 2, Termina, ominously titled The Sulfur God. In this ending, the sulfur god finally rises to take a more tangible form on the surface. While the game doesn't explicitly show a lengthy aftermath, the implications are terrifying. The sulfur god's advent as heralding a world lost to chaos and torture, essentially an apocalyptic outcome where an unchecked deity of hatred unleashes endless suffering. This is speculative, but it aligns with what one would expect if the embodiment of hatred were let loose. An age of chaos, madness, and pain that could make even the cruel events of previous eras pale in comparison. From a narrative perspective, the sulfur god serves as the dark shadow of ALLL-MER's legacy. Whereas ALLL-MER created a new order founded, ostensibly, on hope, unity, and justice, though enforced through violence, the sulfur god represents hate, disunity, and suffering. One might interpret that the existence of the sulfur god is a commentary on the impossibility of pure goodness without evil. Even as ALLL-MER attained a Christ-like perfection, all the evil had to go somewhere. In Jungian terms, the sulfur god is ALLL-MER's shadow, the repressed aspects made manifest. This has interesting theological implications. In Fear and Hunger, God and devil are literally two halves of the same being. Such a concept resonates with Gnostic ideas or certain occult traditions, where the demiurge, an evil god, is a corrupted aspect of the true divine, or where Lucifer was once part of God's design. It suggests a kind of cosmic balance. ALLL-MER could not ascend without creating an equal and opposite force. The in-game evidence reinforces their interdependence. For instance, a powerful spell called Longinus contains the symbol of the sulfur god in its design, yet its description references ALLL-MER. This peculiar detail further cements their connection, the implication being that even when invoking ALLL-MER's power, one cannot escape the sulfur god's influence, since they are two sides of the same coin. The name Longinus itself, the legendary spear that pierced Christ, might hint at the idea of piercing the divine, symbolically touching that hidden dark side. Alchemically, we could view ALLL-MER and the sulfur god as representing solve et coagula, dissolve and coagulate. ALLL-MER dissolved his impurities, which then coagulated into a new entity. Sulfur, as one of the three prime alchemical principles, mercury, sulfur, salt, is often associated with the soul's fiery nature. The sulfur god being basically pure sulfur, in alchemical sense, suggests he is all fiery passion and aggression, without the tempering elements of reason, mercury, or body, salt. Little wonder, then, that if freed, he would bring an all-consuming hellfire of chaos. From a personal or speculative standpoint, one can't help but wonder what the sulfur god's own intentions or consciousness might be. Is he intelligent and driven? or more of an elemental force of hate? The lore provides scant direct insight, which adds to his mystique. The fact that he required a cult and a bloody ritual to reappear hints that he might be trapped or dormant unless fed with violence, almost like a slumbering demon that awakens to feast on carnage. This also parallels how in some mythologies, dark gods require blood sacrifices to manifest. Additionally, the sulfur god's emergence in the 20th century-like setting of Termina, with firearms, wars, and technology, could be symbolic. One might say that as humanity advanced under ALLL-MER's distant light and later the new gods, a lot of hatred and atrocity accumulated. Wars, genocides, etc., akin to sulfurous fumes under a crust. The sulfur pits could metaphorically be the collective hell humans created in the industrial age. The imagery of dark fumes that rise from pipes of modern cities in the lore of the god of fear and hunger comes to mind. Thus, the sulfur god rising in 1942 amid a World War analog is fitting. It's the eruption of long-buried hate into the world. In conclusion, the sulfur god embodies the unintended dark consequence of divine ascension. He is both a character in the lore and a symbol of unchecked malevolence. While ALLL-MER's influence was largely constructive, if harsh, the sulfur god's influence is purely destructive. Together, they form a dualism, a reminder that even in fear and hunger's grim universe, light and dark increase in tandem. With this understanding of the sulfur god, we now shift our focus to another ascended deity, one that, unlike ALLL-MER and the sulfur god, was born from human suffering and ambition rather than a pre-existing divinity, the Ancient One, also called by another name, the god of fear and hunger. The god of fear and hunger, often referred to simply as the Ancient One. This ascended goddess is a figure as enigmatic as her title suggests. She is unique in that she literally embodies the namesake concepts of the series: fear and hunger, the primal struggles of existence. According to lore, along with ALLL-MER, she is the only other being to have ascended to godhood from a human origin, and indeed is regarded as ALLL-MER's equal in power. Unlike ALLL-MER, however, her birth was not a case of a virtuous mortal transcending via martyrdom. Rather, the god of fear and hunger was conceived through an act of dark ritual and desperation, involving both a new god and a human, and nurtured in the most abject conditions. Her existence is deeply tied to themes of misery, survival, and the notion that progress is forged through suffering. The origin of the god of fear and hunger is recounted in in-game texts, notably another Skin Bible chapter. It tells of a false god and a chosen human joining together in the darkest and wettest of dreams. In plainer terms, a new god, a false god from the perspective of the older pantheon, copulated with a mortal in a nightmarish dream realm. We have concrete identities for these two parents. Nilven, the false god, also known as the Endless One, and a member of the Fellowship of New Gods, and Lagard, the human, known as the Prophesied One. He is also a central character in the first Fear and Hunger game, a man of royal blood with aspirations of divinity. Their union was not a loving or holy one, but a dire gambit. Nilven, as a new god, likely sought to birth something that could surpass the existing gods. The text describes it as happening in a time of extreme desperation. the darkest and the wettest of dreams, suggests a kind of berserk ritual or a coupling in a depraved context. The moment of the god of fear and hunger's birth also marked the downfall of an old god, the god of the depths. In the first fear and hunger game, the god of the depths is an ancient being residing under the dungeons, an enormous sleeping god of darkness. It's said that Lagard's quest, or Nilvin's plan, involved killing the god of the depths by destroying her hearts. The Skin Bible notes, "The forgotten and long dormant god of the depths perished that night. Only an older god never truly perishes. In its stead, the god of fear and hunger planted its roots and started to grow her influence on the surface world." This line is crucial. It indicates that the new god was essentially germinated in the corpse of an old god. Because old gods cannot truly be destroyed, remnants of the god of the depths persisted and were woven into the new being. The product of Nilvin and Lagard's union was a fetus of divinity. This nascent soul radiated the light of an older god from conception, meaning it had power on par with an old god's soul despite being newly formed. Pregnancy and birth, however, took a very unorthodox path. The soul needed a womb to grow in, and as lore has it, it hatched inside the body of a little girl, who was then taken to the very bottom of the dungeons of fear and hunger. This little girl's identity is not explicitly given, suggesting she might have been a hapless victim, or she could be an orphan or prisoner present in the dungeons, essentially used as a living incubator. A pure child, subjected to unimaginable suffering in darkness, serving as the vessel for a dark god. I have also presented explanations and hypotheses regarding the true origin of the girl in my analysis video on the god of fear and hunger. Based on the girl's reactions toward Lagard and Nilvin, as well as her interactions throughout the journey to the deepest area of the dungeon, I lean toward the hypothesis that she is indeed the daughter of Lagard and Nilvin. However, she was very likely born in a manner similar to ALLL-MER, meaning that Nilvin combined her own divinity with the special soul within Lagard to create a divine seed, which was then implanted into the body of a human woman, resulting in the birth of the girl. Moreover, Nilvin may have been manipulating many of the events that ultimately led to the child being brought into the dungeon. The player is also forced into a pact with her in order to obtain the key required to open the gate of the Golden Temple, where the Ascension Throne is located, a throne that allows mortal beings to reach divine power. In exchange, the player must escort the girl, her daughter, to the deepest area of the dungeon, thereby triggering one of the game's main endings. In this ending, the god of fear and hunger was born from the girl, not in the gentle way of normal birth, but more like a creature emerging from a host. The resulting entity knowing nothing but misery and suffering, having been born literally in a pit of horrors. Thus, from the very start, this new deity was untouched by any joy or hope. As one account eloquently puts it, the god of fear and hunger was a pure child, a blank slate birthed in the darkest pits of human creation. That is where she grew. That is all she knew. She was the pure representation of fear and hunger, not spoiled by even a glimmer of hope. This origin establishes the god of fear and hunger as the embodiment of absolute despair and deprivation. Unlike the inspirational ascension of ALLL-MER, or even the vengeful formation of the sulfur god, Her birth was a tragedy that was carefully planned and deliberately arranged, born from humanity's desire to rise while being driven by fear of its own decline. Not only that, this origin also reflects the inhumanity of humanity itself, as people were willing to sacrifice everything in order to achieve their final goal. And yet, paradoxically, from this abyssal genesis came something that would drive humanity forward. Once the god of fear and hunger took root in the world, her influence began to seep upward to the surface world. The lore suggests she did not manifest as a conquering deity with cultists, at least not initially. Rather, her presence was more subtle and conceptual. The era following her birth is known as the Cruel Age. During this time, humanity was plagued by unprecedented strife, but also unprecedented advancement. It is said that up until that point, mankind had endured long periods of stagnation and suffering under the old orders. To rise from those perilous pits, growing pains were necessary. In other words, the world had to go through hell to reach a new level of development, and that hell was fueled by the new god's influence. Under the Ancient One's unseen guidance, fear and hunger became the motivators for progress. Fear motivated people, while hunger kept them moving forward. People cherished hardship and drew inspiration from it. They learned from it. This almost reads like a dark inversion of Enlightenment ideals. Instead of reason and hope driving innovation, it was fear and want, and it worked. What followed was advancement that mankind had not seen since the Forgotten Ages. In the context of the game's world, this refers to a rapid industrial and technological boom. The lore specifically references the dark fumes that rise from pipes of modern cities as a direct consequence of this era, clearly alluding to industrialization. Essentially, the god of fear and hunger's era transformed medieval stagnation into an industrial revolution, albeit one born from suffering. The term Cruel Age encapsulates it. An age that was cruel in means, but perhaps fruitful in ends. One can draw comparisons to our real-world history. The Industrial Revolution indeed brought great progress, but at the cost of immense human suffering. Child labor, exploitation, urban poverty. The lore of fear and hunger mythologizes this, attributing it to an actual deity's influence. Progress as a deity's gift, with suffering as the price. It's a grim commentary on the notion that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Here, fear of death or the unknown spurs invention, weapons, defenses, scientific inquiry, and hunger, literal and metaphorical, spurs productivity and expansion. The god of fear and hunger, therefore, can be seen as a personification of eustress, the productive pain that pushes one to survive and adapt. She is ever-present darkness, but one that can be used to create something new and improve humanity by powering through it. This line a philosophical angle. Her existence taught humanity that darkness itself could be harnessed as a tool for improvement, that suffering had value. It's almost Nietzschean in sentiment, the idea of gaining strength through suffering. Being born of pure despair, the god of fear and hunger's nature is not benevolent, but neither is it wantonly malevolent like the sulfur god. Instead, she is described as neutral darkness. Fear and hunger in their raw forms are not evil per se, just primal forces. There is a sense that she has no malice or mercy, only an indifferent, relentless drive. She is sometimes depicted as a malformed, initially misshapen creature. Her symbol is particularly telling. It is basically the rune of the god of the depths, doubled and mirrored. The god of the depths rune was a backward R. By mirroring and doubling it, it implies that the new god replaced the depths deity and also symbolizes duality, perhaps the dual nature of fear and hunger themselves. Visually, one could imagine it as two figures back to back, or a reflection in dark water, emphasizing that she arose from the depths' god's demise and is twofold: fear and hunger. In terms of abilities, we do not have much information. During the first game, the god of fear and hunger is in the process of being born. By the end, depending on player actions, she can manifest. Notably, one of the possible outcomes is that a little girl is used as a vessel. In one ending, we can actually give birth to the god of fear and hunger, if certain conditions are met. This ending is considered the darkest one, unleashing the Ancient One into the world. That aligns with how the Cruel Age started. Presumably, that ending is canon for the lore, as the Cruel Age did occur. The god of fear and hunger is an immensely powerful entity, nearly immune to most mortal attacks, befitting the nature of an ascended god, beings believed to possess power on par with the old gods of the past. Her lack of hope is key to understanding her. In mythology, when Pandora opened her box and released all the evils, sickness, famine, war, etc., the only thing left inside was hope. In a way, the god of fear and hunger is a being for whom Pandora's box was opened and even hope escaped, leaving only pure suffering. This makes her absolute in representing despair. And yet, paradoxically, hope did come out of this box in an unexpected form. The hope of progress, the idea that through overcoming fear and hunger, humanity could better itself. It's a very dark twist on the concept of hope. Hope through hopelessness. Theologically, one might compare her to the concept of Erebus or primordial night. In Greek mythology, Nyx, night, and Erebos, darkness, are generators of both terrors and necessary cycles. Here, the Ancient One is literal darkness that ironically lights the way for mankind, since her soul radiates the light of an older god, even though she was born of darkness. By killing the god of the depths and taking her place, the god of fear and hunger and the age she brought forth are, in essence, closer to the old gods than to a deity born from humanity and for humanity. She inherited part of that old god's essence, which might be one reason she's considered on par with ALLL-MER. This is an interesting symmetry. ALLL-MER ascended by overthrowing the new gods, dismantling their influence, and taking control of human worship, while the god of fear and hunger ascended by overthrowing an old god, quite literally using the old god's body as the vessel for her birth. In essence, both deposed their predecessors to claim a seat among divinity. However, when viewed more broadly, both the age brought forth by ALLL-MER and the age ushered in by the god of fear and hunger bear the imprint of an older order once ruled by the old gods. In my analysis of ALLL-MER, I argued that he may have been a god intentionally brought into being under the designs of certain old gods, specifically Gorgoroth, Sylvian, and Vitruvia. As a result, although ALLL-MER originated from humanity, the divine order he established can be seen as a continuation of an older system. In short, both ALLL-MER and the god of fear and hunger are failed products. Neither is truly a god born from humanity and for humanity. In the timeline, the god of fear and hunger's cruel age likely corresponds to a period that comes after ALLL-MER's disappearance and the rise of the new gods, or possibly overlapping. If ALLL-MER left circa year 809, the new gods reigned, but apparently did not satisfy humanity's needs, leading to experiments like Nilvan's that birthed the Ancient One, perhaps some centuries later. The Cruel Age could be roughly analogous to the late Middle Ages into the modern era. By the time of Termina, 1942, the Cruel Age is basically the world's recent past, and we are in an era of mechanized warfare and existential dread, arguably an extension or culmination of the Cruel Age. However, by 1942, the older gods have departed, including possibly the god of fear and hunger. It's said that many older deities, even ascended ones, receded from direct involvement as time went on. There is an eerie note that older gods never truly perish, which means even if the Ancient One's active era waned, her influence might linger, for example, in how humans still carry fear and hunger in their hearts, a universal constant. Regardless, the Ancient One's legacy is the modern world's relentless advancement and suffering. The god of fear and hunger can be seen as a symbol of humanity's darkest potential yielding innovation. Her story suggests that when humanity's back is against the wall, starving, terrified, trapped in the dark, that is when it evolves. It's a cynical yet thought-provoking message. Would we have lights if we were never afraid of the dark? Would we strive for abundance if we never felt hunger? In this universe, the answer is no. Thus, a deity ensures those conditions exist to push humanity onward. One could also view her creation as an act of hubris by the new gods. Nilvan and Lagarde attempted to create an older god, essentially playing with cosmic forces beyond their ken. The result was indeed a powerful deity, but one that likely far exceeded what they hoped for. There's an implication Nilvan wanted a light of mankind in her daughter, but only true darkness does not breed light, meaning Nilvan might have hoped this child would be a savior, but instead she got a being of darkness. So in a way, the god of fear and hunger is a cautionary tale. In trying to manufacture salvation, the meddlers produced a god that brought a dark salvation. From a personal stance, one might empathize with the Ancient One despite her frightful aspect. She was an innocent, a pure child, thrust into a world of pain. She knew nothing else, so she enacted what she knew upon the world. There's almost a tragic quality to her. She represents the abused child that grows into an abuser in a cycle of trauma on a mythic scale. But unlike a simple villain, she inadvertently helped humanity adapt. In summary, the god of fear and hunger stands as the embodiment of the axiom, no pain, no gain. She is a dark goddess, born from humanity's and divinity's collective sins and miseries, who then used those very qualities to fuel progress. Her story intersects intriguingly with both the old pantheon and the new, making her a bridge between eras. ALLL-MER and the god of fear and hunger allow us to witness different paths through which an ascended god comes to rule. For ALLL-MER, this path is one of piety and sacrifice. For the god of fear and hunger, it is a path shaped by despair and cruelty. We also see that, despite both being gods of human origin in essence, the order they bring into the world closely resembles that of the old gods. In other words, humanity has not yet truly escaped the influence of these ancient divine entities. Born from chaos and carrying boundless desire and ambition, humanity will never cease its advance until it reaches its goals. It is precisely this nature that drives the events of the second game, where we witness the emergence of logic, the machine god, a singular entity that embodies the totality of human aspiration and accumulated knowledge. If the Ancient One was forged in the crucible of the industrial age, then logic is the child of the dawn of the information age, an artificial god created not through mystical ritual, but through human intellect and ingenuity. In the grim tapestry of fear and hunger, logic, also called the machine god, is a comparatively new and extraordinary addition. She is introduced in Fear and Hunger 2, Termina, as the hidden final adversary and the outcome of the game's secret ending A. In contrast to ALLL-MER and the god of fear and hunger, who ascended through quasi-spiritual means, logic is a newborn god created through science and technology. Her emergence represents the ultimate culmination of humanity's attempt to take control of its own fate by literally building a god. As such, logic stands at the intersection of divinity and machinery, a synthetic deity, a man-made goddess of reason in a world previously ruled by primal gods of emotion and nature. The story of logic's creation is intimately tied to a secret military scientific endeavor often referred to as Project Logic. The centerpiece of this project is a mysterious cube, an advanced device that is repeatedly mentioned in documents and letters found throughout Prehevel, the setting of Termina. One character, Ryla, is crucial to these events. Ryla was a young prodigy in engineering from the Kingdom of Bremen who became involved in cutting-edge research. In a letter, she cryptically wrote about a cube and noted that the Eastern Union was desperately trying to replicate the cube. This implies the cube is a singular technology so potent that major world powers are racing to copy it. Ryla also expressed concern that the Kaiser of Bremen, a fascist dictator figure in the game, analogous to a World War II-era tyrant, was after something in Prehevel related to this cube, and she intended to go there to intervene. Based on the details found throughout the lore, we can piece together what truly happened. Ryla gradually realized that Kaiser was targeting the Logic project. She attempted to contact her allies in an effort to stop him, but all such attempts ultimately failed. Ryla was captured by Kaiser and subjected to torture in order to extract information about the project's location. In the end, she managed to escape and return just before Kaiser could uncover the project's final location. Fully aware that the project could not be allowed to fall into the hands of someone as dangerous as Kaiser, even though logic was still incomplete, Ryla made a desperate decision. She used her own body to activate the project. As a result, Ryla became the vessel for the entity that would later be revealed to be Logic, the machine god. The location of this fateful event is a secret bunker laboratory beneath Prehevel, known as the White Bunker. This bunker was heavily fortified and required activating 3 telectroscopes around the city to gain access, which the player must do to reach Ending A. The telectroscopes and the advanced nature of the bunker suggest that the technology level is far beyond typical 1940s equipment, hinting that perhaps reality itself is being altered. Indeed, parts of the bunker defy normal space and architecture, possibly due to Rare's influence or the budding god's presence. Although Kaiser ultimately managed to locate the project, it was already too too late. Despite his frustration at failing to seize control of it, Kaiser chose to remain behind and protect the area to ensure the birth of the machine god. This decision reveals that his final ambition was, in the end, the advancement of humanity itself, marking a clear evolution in his character after all the madness and destruction he had caused throughout both games. When we arrive at the site, Kaiser declares that the ascension of the machine god is about to take place and that he will allow no mistakes during the process. This means that, in order to reach logic, we are forced to confront Kaiser in a decisive life-or-death battle. After defeating Kaiser, the path opens to the heart of the bunker, ominously called the White Womb of Logic. There, we encounter Logic, initially appearing as an artificial entity, essentially Ryla's body integrated into a machine or cocoon-like construct. This is the machine god in its nascent form. A battle ensues. Logic attacks the party with strange powers, including swarms of mechanical moths draining life and technological miracles. Once we overcomes this form, an event triggers. Logic's outer shell cracks open, revealing Ryla's true form as an ascended being. The party is then transported into a surreal alternate dimension called the Artificial Green. This realm's name deliberately mirrors the green hue, which is the mystical plane of the older gods. The term artificial green implies that humans have managed to manufacture their own divine plane, a synthetic heaven for their synthetic god. In this realm, the final moments of Ending A play out. The player can only move forward and witness the birth of the machine god in full. We see Ryla reborn as a radiant mechanical deity, Logic incarnate. The game suggests that this results in the ascension or possible destruction of the player's party. The machine god welcomes you to paradise, and the brave protagonists that entered the White Bunker are never seen again. In effect, the main characters join with or are consumed by Logic, and the remaining survivors, those who never entered the bunker, simply wake up back on the train as if delivered from the nightmare, unharmed. This ambiguous ending leaves it open whether the party was granted some transcendence, a twisted salvation, or simply annihilated. A key phrase from the White Bunker lore is that Logic is the god that came by the ingenuity of humanity. This encapsulates her nature. She is man's creation, not heaven's. She is the product of human knowledge, engineering, and perhaps sheer will to power. Project Logic can be seen as the fulfillment of the new god's goal of mankind, choosing its own gods, taken to its extreme. Not just choosing, but building a god from scratch. Central to understanding Logic is deciphering the role and meaning of the cube. In-game, the cube is never directly used by the player, but contextually it appears to be some sort of core computing or reality warping device that enabled the creation of a soul. One interpretation is that the cube contained an artificial intelligence or a network that, when merged with a human consciousness and possibly powered by ritual or sacrifices, became self-aware and ascended. The mention that the Eastern Union tried to replicate it suggests the cube is more technology than magic, perhaps an advanced computer or quantum engine decades ahead of its time. We might analogize it to the idea of a supercomputer generating a digital god or a neural network, accumulating all human knowledge and becoming sentient. Given that fear and hunger often blends occult with sci-fi, the cube could also be a Lovecraftian artifact, maybe a remnant of ancient technology, or something derived from studying the old gods. The advanced electronic network experiments in Prehevel hint that maybe they tapped into cosmic energies or the collective unconscious. From a symbolic viewpoint, a cube traditionally represents solidity, order, and the material world, as opposed to a sphere which often represents perfection and the heavens. The choice of a cube as the foundation of the machine god could signify structured logic and human order. It's a stark contrast to the organic, often circular or amorphous symbolism of the older deities. For example, the cycle of nature, the infinite womb of Sylvian. The cube might also directly references the lament configuration, a cube-shaped box prominently featured in the Hellraiser horror movie series. This mystical, mechanical device serves as a door, or a key to a door, to another dimension or plane of existence, or the concept of the tesseract, cosmic cube of power in fiction, the idea of a contained divine power. While those references are speculative, the cube clearly was meant to stand out as something modern and engineered, the antithesis of an idol or a totem. One striking piece of symbolism noted in the lore is the mark on Ryla's chest after she becomes the vessel of logic. It is described that, looking at the cube on Ryla's chest, we see Venushka's sigil with a line cutting it. Venushka is the old god of nature, the child of Sylvian and Grogoroth. His symbol typically is a swirling pattern denoting natural cycles. A line cutting through Venushka's symbol suggests that the machine god has supplanted nature. In fact, the lore explicitly interprets this. This might mean that the machine god took the place of the now dead nature god, just as the god of fear and hunger took the place of the dead god of the depths. This parallel is very important. It shows that logic's ascension was not just a random technological marvel. It fits the cosmic narrative of one god replacing another. Humanity, by creating logic, effectively declared that the era of nature, Venushka, is over, ushering in the era of machine. This is historically resonant as well. The 20th century saw humanity conquer nature in unprecedented ways. Industrialization, urbanization, often at nature's expense. Now, just as the god of fear and hunger's birth marked the industrial, cruel age, logic's birth marks the dawn of a new artificial age. Further symbolic elements can be gleaned from logic's boss fight. In the second phase, she bears inscriptions on her palms. One hand has Creato, Latin for I create or creation, and the other for destruction or annihilation. These words correspond to powers. The creation hand heals her. The destruction hand casts deadly spells. This imagery deliberately echoes the duality of creation and destruction, much like the duality of Sylvian, life, love, and Grogoroth, death, destruction, among the old gods. It's as if logic, the machine god, embodies both of those principles in a synthesized way. This makes sense. Technology can create, build cities, cure disease, and destroy, make bombs, cause devastation, in equal measure. By inscribing those on her palms, logic literally wields creation in one hand and destruction in the other. It suggests that she has attained a level of control that rivals or surpasses the old deities, a master of polar forces through pure logic. Another attack of hers, Moth Swarm, drains life to restore hers. The moth is an interesting motif. Moths are creatures drawn to light, and in some folklore they represent souls. A swarm of artificial moths could symbolize a collective of souls or data bits feeding the machine god. Perhaps each person who joins logic is like a moth attracted to her light, becoming part of her. This aligns with the theory that logic functions like a network or hive mind. Indeed, we can analogize this logic to a modern-day internet, a man-made god that people join with to boost its power and share in its experience. That is a compelling way to see it. As the internet connects all minds and data, an AI god like logic could absorb human consciousness en masse, growing stronger and granting some form of digital immortality or collective knowledge. The ending A of Termina, which results in logic's birth, is deliberately opaque and haunting. The imagery of the party stepping into the paradise of the artificial green and never returning suggests an ascension. Perhaps the characters transcended their mortal forms and became one with logic's new world. The term paradise here is intriguing. Could a machine construct a paradise? Possibly, if one imagines a utopia within a simulated reality or a perfectly ordered system. Alternatively, paradise might be ironic. The protagonists might have been effectively digitized or dissolved into logic, which to an outside observer is akin to death. The fact that other contestants simply wake up safe implies that logic removed those she took interest in, perhaps those who actively helped birth her, from the normal timeline. This ending can be viewed through multiple lenses. On one hand, it's the ultimate triumph of human achievement. Mankind not only defied the old cosmic order, but replaced it with its own creation, potentially freeing itself from the whims of alien gods. There's a Promethean pride in that. The fellowship of new gods wanted humans to choose their gods, and in logic, humans made their god, thereby assuming full control. It's a form of singularity, a concept in futurism where an AI surpasses human intelligence and fundamentally changes civilization. Logic would represent a singularity event in the fear and hunger world. On the other hand, the outcome is portrayed as eerie and ominous, not an unequivocal good. The machine god's victory results in the disappearance of our heroes and an uncertain future. This could signify that in achieving this godhood, humanity loses something essential, perhaps individuality or the unpredictability of life. A world governed by logic might be a sterile utopia, free of pain, but also free of freedom. It echoes common science fiction themes. The idea of an AI bringing peace by perhaps controlling or eliminating humans. The trope of a computer deciding the best way to end war is to kill everyone or forcefully upload them to a virtual reality. Given fear and hunger's consistently dark tone, one might suspect that ending A is not meant to be entirely happy. It's more of a true ending in terms of unveiling the deepest secrets, but it carries heavy philosophical baggage. By analyzing it, one can surmise the developer's commentary. After ages defined by faith, ALLL-MER's age, and fear, cruel age, now comes an age defined by logic and technology. Each brought greatness and horror. Faith unified, but also led to crusades. Fear industrialized, but also polluted and oppressed. Logic may bring enlightenment, but also cold, inhuman order. In many ways, logic, the machine god, completes an alchemical-like cycle present in the series lore. Alchemy often sought the union of opposites to produce the philosopher's stone, ultimate enlightenment. Over the ages, fear and hunger presented opposites like life versus death, fear versus hope, nature versus machine. With logic, humanity has forced a new conjunction: man and machine, creation and destruction, logic and soul. Interestingly, Rare, the moon god, is deeply involved in Termina and opposes human ascension. Yet he allowed logic's scenario to unfold by setting the stage. Perhaps Rare considered a mechanical god less of a threat to the cosmic order than a human soul god. Or perhaps he wanted to demonstrate the futility of humans' endeavors. If the latter, one wonders if the cycle simply continues. Will logic eventually leave or be challenged by some new force? The ascended gods of fear and hunger. ALLL-MER, the god of fear and hunger, the sulfur god, and logic. Each embody a different facet of the human condition elevated to divine scale. Through their origins and legacies, the game presents a sweeping myth of humanity's relationship with the divine. From faith and sacrifice to suffering, hatred, and ultimately intellect and technology. ALLL-MER represents humanity's longing for meaning, unity, and salvation, but also warns of the violence that can arise from absolute belief. The god of fear and hunger personifies suffering and survival, showing how despair itself can become a driving force for progress. The sulfur god stands as the shadow of that progress, a reminder that what humanity rejects can return in far more destructive forms. And logic, the machine god, marks the culmination of human intellect, raising the unsettling question of what happens when mankind attempts to replace the divine with its own creations. Each of these beings presides over a transformative age, from sacred order to cruel progress to a future governed by calculation and data. Together, they reveal a recurring truth within fear and hunger. The gods are not distant rulers, but reflections of humanity's fears, desires, and ambitions. In the end, the world of fear and hunger holds up a dark mirror to our own history. Its gods are born from human hands, human suffering, and human thought. And the question it leaves us with is an uneasy one. When humanity finally takes full control of its fate, will that lead to salvation, or merely a new form of fear and hunger?